Sure. Greetings and welcome. This is Lansing Online News Radio. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. I am Bonnie Buckaroo, and I am joined by my co-host Bill Castanier, and both of us, I think, are parked on the street tonight. One of the things that I'm amused by as I come to the studio each time is it seems that they change the parking lot arrangement every single time I show up downtown.
They do indeed. Mostly, though, is you can't get in it.
Right now.
Not quite sure why they are doing that.
Apparently, one's under renovation.
Right, and then the other one is purchased by LCC. It's just not being utilized yet.
And then they always surprise me by blocking off a few of the on-street parking ones by putting caps over the meters. So it gets more exciting every time we show up down here.
And we only have to do it once a week for a student trying to navigate that. It gets a little more difficult.
I would think. One of the challenges, though, we were surprised earlier this year when we came downtown and we found out that we have these upcoming events all over town. You said there's a couple coming up here shortly, right?
Right. This weekend is Jazz Fest for 2 days in Old Town, and it's on the streets. It's free.
Mm-hmm.
I think, of course, you have to buy your own beer. They haven't figured out a way to give that away yet.
That's for the best.
And then a week from this weekend, so the 10th, 11th, and 12th, the Michigan State University and East Lansing Folk Festival, which I believe is celebrating its 25th year in different ways. I mean, it's morphed over time. That's a long time for an event.
Who's headlining, do you know?
Now, you seldom recognize the headliners unless you're into a certain genre of music.
I see.
They'll have Cajun, they'll have other indigenous groups, but you seldom recognize it.
But you said you were surprised to find that the Common Ground this year was down by 5,000. We knew something was up when we came down to do our radio show, and we actually did find parking that night. Because usually when Common Ground is on, we have to park about 10 blocks away and walk in, and this time we didn't. What do you attribute that to? Was it this year's baking temperatures?
That's part of it, I think, but I think it's been dropping in attendance regularly.
Oh, it has?
Yes. This is the largest drop.
The largest decline?
Right. Last year, of course, it was 55,000, 50 this year approximately. They haven't crunched the final numbers yet. But if you take a look at losing 5,000 people and they spend, say, $150 for this week-long ticket and $50 for food and drinks, that's $750,000. It adds up fast.
It sure does.
And it's hard to believe that you could plan to lose that much going into the season. It'd be interesting to talk with them and ask them about that. I doubt that they did.
Trying to keep a track of the economy through non-traditional means is part of the challenges, I think. I am somewhat suspicious of some of the public figures. I think it's awfully hard to tell how much economic activity is really taking place. But it's events like this where you see that decline over time as people just, I think, have less money to go out.
And events get tired.
Well, there's that.
That just happens. It's something that's the nature of an event. They're looking at what now? I'm trying to think how many years they've been at it. 15? Has it been that long?
Has it been that long? Wow.
It doesn't seem like it could be that long.
I don't know.
Yeah. But events definitely get tired. And also, I think they're faced with the vagaries of who is touring.
True.
At a second tier.
Yeah.
So they can't go after the big dogs because they can't think about paying them. So they have to find someone who's in a nearby state who would be willing sometimes to make an interim stop.
I think one of the bigger declines that we've seen is it used to be that I would see billboards for the county fairs because they would be attracting big name stars. Jackson was always famous for landing a star just as the person was peaking and becoming really popular. So they would lock them up a year in advance, get them at a somewhat bargain rate, and then have a real big headliner. But we don't see. I mean, it used to be the Ionia Free Fair was advertising all the time about its shows. And I don't think the fair circuit is what it once was either.
And I think the fairs have tried, a lot of the fairs anyway, have gone back to a traditional county fair where its focus is on agriculture.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't lose money doing that usually.
I would hope not. Although one of the signs I did see on the way in, and I had to tell you this, Bill, is I've been going by the Rite Aid on my way down here on Monday nights, and they often have things, and today's sign says, summer toys BOGO free. Well, for weeks I've been seeing this, and I finally went home and I Googled BOGO because I thought there's some horrible new chemical like BFA or some sort of mercury that's contaminating all these toys, and they have found a supply of BOGO free toys. No, what BOGO stands for is buy one, get one free. So the dreaded BOGO curse, which turned out to be not so much of a curse.
It's a tough, and that's something that's a new trend in retailing. It's tough to be in retailing right now.
Yeah.
JCPenney's is trying to fight back against their idea to go to one price, no advertising. Yeah, it's not working well.
JCPenney stock has been tanking.
Yeah. You're going to see a CEO take it to part soon if they haven't already.
Well, you were reading today about my favorite new publication that I read, which is Henry Blodgett's Business Insider, and apparently they had a feature on that on the Wall Street Journal. My hunch is they didn't think much of it because, after all, I think it's stealing quite a bit of WSJ's thunder right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it is. They're up to about 90 staff people. They still haven't made a lot of money, if any, but they had venture capital funding. One of the points that was made in the story was that at the early days of newspapers, the newspaper industry was vicious. A lot of price cutting.
Oh, yeah.
A lot came in.
Newspaper wars.
Right. And I think they're, in some ways, applying some of the Hearst techniques at Business Insider. They've got a pretty good strategy. There's always is scantily a good way of saying it, or seductive.
Seductive young woman.
One young woman on the homepage.
Mm-hmm.
Their headlines are sometimes alarming.
Yes.
Make you want to click through to them.
I think the news nowadays is alarming. So I don't know. Maybe if there's a better economic era, we'll find out whether they're exaggerating or not.
Absolutely. But I think it's, you read it, I read it, and it's starting to get a lot of readership from people, especially young. I mean, we're not younger, but it's skewing younger, I guess.
I think, skewing younger. When I go out and walk the dog in the morning now, I find myself reading news on my smartphone. Boy, this is a bad thing. I'm going to fall head first into a ditch one of these days.
I told you about New York City.
I know. And, I read Zero Hedge and Business Insider. That's about what it takes. I can read both of those in the circuit to take the dog out into the field. So.
Well, you're probably, if you know your path, you're not likely to run into someone.
Well, one thing I would like to take a moment to talk about was we did hold our Va-Va Room event on Saturday night at Bone Wired Cafe. We had 7 women who took advantage of the opportunity to tell personal stories about their lives, their bodies, and give voice to some of their concerns about what's been happening with what the general perception is the war on women, which has heated up in the state of Michigan in particular. And so 7 of those videos are currently on our website, the LansingOnlineNews.com website. So those who are interested might want to go there and listen to these women talk about some of the experiences that they've had in their lives. One woman had chosen selective reduction because she had 4 embryos and 2 were damaged. And to give one of the babies, potential babies, a chance at life, she chose to reduce the others. And how difficult a decision that is, and how this would be taken away from women in the state of Michigan after 20 weeks, given the upcoming bills that are busy being ran through. There had been a hearing the week before, and the bill has now passed the Senate. We have now a lot of additional elements to build the Super Abortion Bill 5711, and it's probably going to have another hearing on August 15th, and it may take off quite quickly. So we'll try to keep track of that, and we'll keep people informed about what's happening.
What's the next step in that process?
It's that August 15th hearing.
Yeah, and then it would go to a full Senate.
Yes, and then it'll go, and it will have to go to conference committee because of some differences between the two.
The House has already passed it.
And this one, the Senate will be the first state in the union to add fetal remains. You will have to hire a hearse to come and pick up the fetal remains if you have an abortion. You have to make these arrangements before you will be allowed to have an abortion. They will sign a death certificate, and that's a public document, so your name will be revealed. It will potentially be printed in the paper that you have suffered the death of a child in the local newspaper. And this is beginning at 10 weeks for an abortion at the time at which the embryo is about the size of a vitamin pill. So sending a hearse and having a funeral director take care of this and issue a death certificate is, shall we say, more than a little burdensome and designed really to just sort of scare women away.
And I think a lot of people aren't going to believe what you're saying.
I know.
Because it's so absurd.
I know. But it's churning its way through. Many people think that Jack Lessenberry wrote a column in Metro Times, and he's quite a good columnist, and he thinks that the governor is very concerned that this is going to happen because it might well energize all the women on the other side to come out and vote in November. But part of the challenge is it's sort of those doldrums of summer where it's hard to get the news up. And we're hoping to do something about that to try to educate some women about some of the things that are happening in the state, which is a pretty good segue, I hope, into a discussion with our first guest, Dr. Joe Darden from Michigan State University, professor of geography, Fulbright scholar. And Joe, you have done a lot of work. You in the past have done the State of Black Michigan reports and so forth. And I wondered if you could tell me what's coming up with the voter suppression things going on in Michigan and nationwide.
Well, Michigan is one of the states in which there is some degree of flexibility with the voter ID issue. It's not as strict and rigid as some of the other states. There are about 30 states. So Michigan will probably allow the people to vote, but they'll probably have to sign some affidavit of some kind in order to document that they are indeed the person they say they are if they don't have an ID, picture ID. So in this case, it may discourage some people from voting, but probably not if one is coached to learn how to do it. First, try and get the ID. If you cannot, but still go to the polls anyway and vote, then there's a higher probability that you might still get your vote in if you do that, as opposed to staying away, which is not the solution to this problem.
Now, is that issuing a provisional ballot then? Is that what they'll do?
They will do that, and
because there's a question about how many of those ever get counted.
Well, that's a good question, and I'm not sure. I really don't know. That's something that will be looked into, I guess, after this thing is over, if it's a very close election or something. But it may get worse, because there's a possibility now that the Republican legislature may sort of redraft a bill that's a little bit more acceptable to the government, and that might be a more rigid voter ID requirement here as well.
Here's one of the things that surprised me, Joe. The Voting Rights Act, passed in the 1960s under Lyndon Johnson.
Right.
It said that you didn't have to prove intent. The big issue was, everybody in the South was insisting that these tests were perfectly valid and rational. And so they said, we don't care what the intent is. We only care what the outcome is. If it disproportionately impacts protected groups, then you have to change what amounted to a poll tax in any case, or poll tests. Right. This is obviously having a disproportional impact.
No question about it. It is. But to get it changed, it's probably going to have to go through the courts, because there's a pattern. In all but one state, it's Republican-dominated legislatures that have been passing these things. So there is a partisan kind of issue here. And it just so happened that Republicans do not necessarily become concerned about people who are not white in most cases, because it's on a white party. And most of those who are impacted will be those who traditionally vote Democratic. So it has a partisan base to it. And I don't think it can be stopped, though, unless the courts overrule some of these laws.
Is it that you have to reach the point that the vote has to take place and then you can
take
it to court? Some
of them, they're already doing it.
Okay.
It's just that in some of these states, it's probably going to require the courts to do what they can until the election occurs. Now, there's a possibility that the courts will not act before November. And so that's a problem.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, that's a serious problem.
In some cases, they've estimated that as much as 25% of the African American vote could be impacted by this.
In some states, that's true. Yes, in some states that is true. And so, in a very close election, this could be a serious problem.
And the challenge is, in reality, Joe, as we look at it, and you're far more the demographer than I, there really isn't a national election. It's 7 swing states.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
And
that's exactly right. That's why I do not pay as much attention to the national polls. I look at state polls. I look at those very carefully.
Yeah.
And which states we're talking about. And I look at the demographics.
Right.
And by doing that, I think I can get a pretty good idea as to who might win this thing.
Well, does this voter suppression laws in Michigan going to impact students as well?
It will impact students in part because the students may have an address that they're in one place and really at university.
Yeah.
And it's a question of whether they can vote here as opposed to voting in their hometown. So that might be an issue. Plus, it has to have an expiration date.
The ID has to have an expiration date.
Yeah,
isn't that bizarre?
That's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that may be an issue as well.
Because I've heard that your NRA, membership card,
Yeah.
because it has an expiration. You can use your NRA card, but you can't use your
That's
student
right.
ID
That's
because
right.
we'll trust that NRA
That's right.
card.
See, in Texas, you could also use a gun license thing to do it in Texas, but you can't use the ID. So it's designed, obviously, to suppress the vote of some individuals. There's no question about that. And that's why this majority leader in Pennsylvania admitted as much when he said that we got this done now because we got the voter suppression in, and Romney would probably win Pennsylvania, he thinks. But at any rate, he didn't expect the news to catch that, I guess. It would have been honest for a change.
This is
Pretty blunt.
Yes, exactly.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. The amusing part is the cover story, of course, is that they want to be vigilant about voter fraud. And the only recent case I read about voter fraud was the Republican official who had his dead wife vote for 6 years.
Which would have probably been one of the two in that state.
And I just keep hoping that somehow she was voting against him. But I guess
Doonesbury this last week ran a daily cartoon on voter suppression. He basically had Jim Crow taking a tour of the states that were doing it. Very clever.
Yeah, but what's interesting about it, though, it is not occurring in only those states that traditionally, had the poll tax years ago.
No.
It's sort of all over. I mean, the pattern is Republican-dominated legislature. That is the pattern.
And new Republican governors.
Yes, that's the pattern.
We had that sweep that took place in 2010.
Exactly. And that's the pattern. So in a sense, it's occurred all over the place.
It is, especially in the northern swing states.
Exactly right. And so it's different in that sense from the traditional, poll tax idea.
Right. That was a southern strategy.
Exactly. Southern strategy, regional approach. This one is different, which will make it more difficult to deal with because it is different.
Well, it's bizarre. I remember here in Lansing, Michigan, one of the experiments with community policing leads, Officer Don Christie, had a beat in downtown Lansing in one of the low-income neighborhoods. And he thought one of the reasons that a lot of their concerns had been ignored was that voter rates out of that area were so low. Mm-hmm. So he decided to hold a voter registration drive. Mm-hmm. And he was very quickly told by the Republican mayor that if he wanted to be a police officer next week, it would be a really good idea not to hold that.
Yeah.
And I think, we pay lip service to this idea that we want people to vote, but we really don't.
That's right. And this so-called democracy we're in, they really don't want people to vote. Some people anyway.
Yeah.
And that's ironic in a way, because I think that if after this election, a chance that Romney does get in there, and it's very close, and it's controversial this whole thing, I think internationally you're going to see some other countries sort of saying that, look, U.S. is no role model anymore. Right. You're doing exactly the same thing you tell us not to do.
Right.
And so that might just happen.
We wouldn't get a purple finger, a lot of us. And, we had a big deal in Iraq, but not here.
Exactly right. So in a sense, this is really has some serious consequences internationally, I think. It turns out that indeed
we need international poll watchers.
It would be nice to do that.
I had a friend, Stuart Applebaum, he was a political person here with Sam Fishman with the AFL-CIO for many years, and he's now president of the, I forget the name of his union, but RWDSU. Yeah. And he was sent over during the time that Nelson Mandela won his first election, and he was an international observer for the election in South Africa. And he was stunned to find out that his job was to go into the prisons and make sure that the prisoners could vote.
Isn't that interesting?
I mean, and we wouldn't do that.
No. In some states, we don't allow people.
We won't let them vote again.
Exactly right. Even serve their time and everything.
Yeah.
They come out, they still can't vote.
And that's another case where it falls disproportionately on minorities.
African American males and Latino males, and Native American males. I mean, they're the ones who are disenfranchised.
And I know if we really cared about voting, we'd make it a national holiday.
Yes, that's true. But we don't.
And keep the polls open longer.
Keep the polls open longer. In fact, after Obama was elected, some of these places start closing down these polls early this time, so it won't happen again. Like in the black churches they would leave the church and march over to the place.
On the Sundays before election, do that early vote.
They can't do that anymore. They stop closing down, so they wouldn't do it. So it's clearly designed to suppress the vote of some groups. I mean, there's no question about that.
And we see, too, that the older voting equipment goes to the poorer neighborhoods, and so they have less technology, so it takes longer. I was reading an article just recently in Mother Jones magazine, and it was about the sort of ruling sweatshop labor that we see in some of these online internet shopping fulfillment houses, kind of like Amazon's big places, where there's 5 floors and You have a lot of retirees running around filling these orders in baskets and doing this. And the person writing the article had said to the supervisor, well, I need to leave early today because I need to vote. And if you leave early to vote, you're fired. I mean, that seems to me incomprehensible. We would think in another country, you're right, that was outrageous.
That's exactly right. And I think we're losing our moral compass if we really have one. We're losing it with this. Really.
Yeah, I do too.
Because when other countries look at this, they don't look at it like a kind of, what is that party that's doing it? They look at the U.S. as doing this because we're tolerating that, even though the Republicans are doing most of it. We're tolerating it.
Yeah.
And that's what's unfortunate about it, because the outcry should be much greater than it is.
That's what I don't understand either. What happens to that sense of moral outrage on things like that?
That's a good question. Very good question. I think it was Charles Blow who wrote an article on the very thing in the New York Times. I read that. He was asking the same question.
Yeah.
Where is the outrage here?
Yeah. I don't understand.
Where are we marching? When are we marching?
Right. That's exactly right.
And I guess what bothers a lot of people, we were talking about that earlier today, many people who feel that they have put in such a huge effort in the recent past, the millions that came out trying to stop the Iraq War, the people in Wisconsin who showed up in droves trying to protect not become a right to work state, collective bargaining. It didn't have any impact.
It didn't. And I'm still a bit not sure why some of this is happening. I say this for this reason. If you look at the demographics, which are changing, you get more of these groups in. But yet you still have the Republican sort of like power that's sort of they're holding on to it in spite of the changing demographics, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, the war on women, and women have deserted them in droves. Hispanics are gone because of immigration.
Right, but you look at it. Here's the thing, and I say it all the time. The only group, and you can help me with this one, the only group that one would expect to be voting more democratic are white women. Think about it.
I know.
Latinos are not doing it. Asian Americans are not doing it. The Jews are not doing it. All of the groups, young people are not doing it. The only group, and I'm not sure about, the white women. Give me some answers to that question.
Well, there are many of us who've been meeting trying to figure this one out.
I don't understand. I really don't. Now, because that's the group in which Republicans have really been suppressing them.
Oh,
they voted against the equity in terms of the
pay equity.
Sure, they voted
Lilly
against
Ledbetter Act,
yeah, and they're acting the war against women, and yet Republicans still can rely on women to vote for them.
They'll keep doing that until the women quit voting for it.
That's exactly right.
There was an initial 14-point swing away from Romney at the time that the war on women, Rush Limbaugh thing happened, and it lasted about 2 weeks.
Exactly right. So I don't understand that one.
I don't understand that one either. These are the things that baffle me. I don't
understand it. I really don't.
I have so many women say to me, and this is very common, I have women say to me, I don't read the news because it's too depressing. That's going to be a problem. And they say, I really hate politics because it's too depressing and too frustrating. And that can't be a woman's mindset. I had Ann Larrabee, who wrote at MSU, wrote a brilliant column for us on Lansing Online News, said that I went to sleep in Michigan and I woke up in the middle of The Handmaid's Tale.
But this election has so much consequence. One thing. Yeah. If Romney gets elected, he will put on at least 2 other members of the Supreme Court. Yes. Another Scalia and another Thomas. And if he does that, Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned. Right. And so the consequences are very severe. I mean, they really are. Women need to start thinking about this.
And part of the challenge is that even women I talk to when I explain to them about these laws, a lot of them are cast in terms of, we're just trying to keep you safer. We're going to regulate the clinics so that they're safer for you. They cast it in that same kind of language as, we're protecting you from voter fraud. They have found a way to use PR to take ideas that would be anathema to these groups, but cast them in a way that all of a sudden they get their support.
Well, this is true, but why are women like that? I was still asking the question. I know. And I hear the same thing in my classes because other professors will say, look, among the students in the class, the group that's not politically conscious happen to be the same group.
I know.
And that's strange.
What went wrong, do you think, that caused this?
I mean, it's amazing.
It's been developing over time.
Something, yeah.
In some ways, it's the fact that we succeeded so well that they took things for granted. And they're going to be stunned, I believe, when they see how quickly those rights can erode.
Oh, yeah.
We thought that when we did the open mic on Saturday night, one woman came to the mic and said, I didn't expect to have to do this again. I'm going to read something from 84 that I wrote because she said, I thought we solved it
Yes,
then.
that's exactly right.
And I think a lot of people have thought that way, but they're going to be surprised at how quickly a lot of things
Well,
can
they should
go
see
on.
it already. Really,
I know.
it's happening.
I know it is happening, and
God.
it's going to be a very difficult election.
And where's the National Organization for Women? I don't hear about it.
I am the new Lansing
Listen
co-president.
Where are they? But why
I'm
the
the new
national?
co-president.
Okay, nationally, I don't hear much. Where are these?
Well, Lansing's had basically gone into decline and almost gone out of business, right?
It was so bad they gave it to me.
Oh man. Well, it needs to be revitalized.
We're trying.
Because, geez.
We're going to hold a series of teach-ins in the fall on
Well, that's
campus.
good. We need it.
Susan Maston, the College of Engineering,
Okay.
she and I are the new co-presidents
All right.
of Lansing area now. Mary Pollock is doing
She's been out there
she's
for
doing
years.
lobbying
Very
out there now.
She's been very good.
She's great. We're going to try to educate young women
Well, I
about
hope
what's
so.
happening.
I mean, I tell you, I try to do the best I can.
I
But,
know.
hey,
But nationally, the organization should be calling for teach-ins on college
yeah.
campuses.
Terry O'Neill
course.
has been on the Ed Schultz show, but again, part of the problem that we run into is that there is that sort of Fox News echo chamber, and it's very hard. You're not going to get in there.
It's a niche market too.
It is a niche
It's
market.
really niche. I mean, the people that watch that show.
But I keep saying, if they can organize the Arab Spring over Twitter,
Oh yeah.
we should be able to use all
with
social media for this.
It's true. And see, students are going to be, the vote suppression will apply to them as well.
I know.
We have to sort of make sure that they go out and vote.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk to you about too, Joe, is that you have a new book coming out, and it's going to be coming out in January.
It will be March.
Or it will be March.
It will be March. Yes, we've got it. They have it. The MSU Press has it, and
it's working its way through the bowels of the MSU Press. I know.
Yes,
how that goes.
I saw some time. That's very true. But it has a nice cover. We've chosen that.
Good.
It's ready to go.
It's called Detroit.
Detroit, Race Ride, Racial Conflict, and Efforts to Bridge the Racial Divide. Because we want to make sure that there are efforts to do it, try to bridge that divide, which is very wide. And so many organizations tried to change it and make things better, but they fail every time. They just could not overcome the opposition to change. And so Detroit ended up in a situation much worse than it was before.
It's utterly astounding.
Yeah,
It's
amazing. But the book does paint a good picture and explain to people why Detroit is the way it is today. And that's important.
It is.
Because some people visit the place and they don't understand why it happened. So the book does a good job of that. And we also, this time around, the other book, maybe this one, the other book we did in 87 was a kind of black-white book. We ignored, for example, Vincent Chin. There's a whole chapter on Vincent Chin this time.
Oh, good.
There's a whole chapter on the Latinos and their struggle in Detroit. A whole chapter on the Arab population of Detroit. So all these groups are part of this effort to bridge that divide. And so the book is much broader this time. And if I had to critique the other book we did, I'd say it was too much of a black-white paradigm.
Too simple.
It was too, and this one is much broader.
Joe, why didn't some of the major community efforts work in Detroit? Because after the riots,
they tried. Oh yeah, they tried. It was just that the opposition to change was so great, with race always in the forefront, and they could not overcome that race piece and class piece, and that was part of the reason for it. No matter what they did, it was always staring in the face. They would not. This is the opposition we're talking about. To change, they would not address that change within the context of race and class. You see, so when we end up with this book, we say here, the whole reason why this disinvestment occurred in Detroit is motivated by the fact of race and class. And the investors would not invest in a place that's overwhelmingly black and overwhelmingly poor. They refused to do it.
It was redlined in essence.
Refused to do it. Yeah.
So is one of the answers for the city to become more demographically...
I do that in the last chapter, and that's a very controversial chapter.
Oh,
it is.
I bet it is.
It's highly controversial, but it has to be said. And so we've written it in there that that's the only way Detroit's going to be saved, is they change their demographics. But you have to do that carefully. And
Peak Oil could do that. We have no public transit in this country, and if the suburbs go down because it's going to cost you $150 to fill your tank to commute.
We don't have any mass transit in Detroit.
Well, true.
So
People mover doesn't
people
get you
aren't
far.
going to have to walk in.
So anyway, that's the issue. But we'll talk about the book another time. Once it comes out, I'd be glad to come back and talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. That's
I think that's an underlying fundamental in this race. I think part of the challenge is that I think it's very difficult for the first black president to speak up openly about voter suppression.
That's right. That's
because
exactly
then
right.
he's pleading a special case.
That's exactly right.
And he has had to be terribly. Yeah. He's almost had to bend over backward to do less for.
That is true, but he shouldn't have to.
No.
But he has a Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And there are whites in the Democratic Party, and they should carry the doggone water. I mean, here's the point: they can carry the water.
Right.
And they're not doing it.
They're not doing it.
And that's the problem. Because he shouldn't have to do any of this stuff. He should sit back, and they should go out and do it.
Where's Joe Biden?
Joe Biden. There you go, Joe Biden.
Yeah, and he's good at that stuff.
He's very good at it. They should go out and do this. Whenever it involves race, they should be out there talking about it. That's what they should do.
And we're losing a lot of time in this election because we've got the Olympics for 2 weeks. Yeah, nobody's going to be talking about anything.
We're getting close.
We're getting very close.
The primaries are coming up here in early August, and then it's going to be. I mean, a lot of these laws are slated to go in just before the election.
Oh, so it's going to be very, very difficult, and there's still a possibility, though, that it may come out okay. What I'm thinking about is this, and this is one prediction here, that the income tax problem that Romney has, I think that's going to haunt him all the way to the end. And he might still have this decision that it's best not to let the public know.
You know, I keep saying, are we really going to elect a president that has a secret U.S. bank account and accounts in the Cayman Islands?
I don't think he thinks that it's best that he not let the public know.
Right.
And I don't think he is going to let the public know.
He's not going to, no.
Right. And there's some smart people around. I've talked to some professors about that. Are you going to vote for somebody and you don't know all about this person's finances? Yeah, I'm not sure. So they're not sure yet. So there's that group that's sort of not sure that might change after he decides he's not going to do it anyway. So
I hope that'll be enough. That and maybe the fact. Now, if he would have only strapped Rafalka the horse to a top of an aircraft carrier to get her over there.
One of the things that will be interesting, though, is if the Democrats have enough money to attack him.
Right.
For negative advertising, because they're not raising money like they did before.
No.
They're not a machine.
No.
Wall Street's moved.
That's true. They can attack him, but I think in the end it's going to be who can get out there, their voters, and I think that's what we have to focus on. I really do. We have to make sure that people go to the polls and vote, and they may not. This voter suppression thing may turn some people off. So I don't have my ID, so I'm not going to go. That's not something they should do.
It's going to be a real problem, and I think on campus it's going to be interesting to see whether the fact that they may not be able to vote really galvanizes students to try to do something about this. They're not that far from the Capitol. They could easily march down there.
They could do that, and I hope they do.
I do too.
I have to be careful in my classes. That's true. I just tell them the facts, so to speak, and try to start endorse a candidate, but I tell them what the data show, and they can do what they want after that. Because as you know, there was this professor in Wisconsin, I guess it was, whatever it was, when he was supporting the unions, I think. And Republicans didn't like it, so he got in a lot of trouble with that. They wanted to have all of his emails and everything else.
John Beckett, they had the same thing happen to him.
Yeah, John did. Yeah. Mackinac Center asked.
Exactly. So I think very careful about that.
So they were just fishing. Yeah.
They were. It was anybody that was involved in that network that did labor studies.
Yeah. So anyway, you have to be very careful about it, but I think we can discuss it. At least I do discuss it. But I do so by saying, well, there is another side over here, and that side believes in that, and this side believes in this, as opposed to,
Got to get the information out there. I may energize as many Rush Limbaugh followers as I do, people who agree with me, but
there are people who disagree, and you get them like that. They disagree with that. Like, for example, some people have no problem with the inequality increasing the wages. They have no problem with that. Yeah. They don't have no problem with that. Where's the problem?
They think they're going to get rich.
There's always that hope, isn't there?
I guess. That and the lotto. And that's about what it's going to take for me, I guess. That's my retirement program.
We should make voting as easy as it is to buy lotto tickets.
And then that would be a good thing.
Yeah, it should be easy. In some places, I think Australia required, I guess. It's requirement by law, everybody should vote. So that
requirement of citizenship, yeah.
That would never get passed here, but I think it'd be something that would be nice. See, because we don't ever know this sort of silent group out there that just don't go to the polls. They don't do anything.
That's right.
I mean, what would they do if they did vote?
Only 25% of the single women in this country vote.
See that?
So 3 out of every 4 single women doesn't vote, and that's sad.
Sad.
That could change the entire face of the country.
As I say many times, over half of the elected are women. Women could really control everything.
We could. And some of us have that dream, Joe. And it's hearing me that has persuaded everybody else to say, what can we do to suppress them?
Women can control everything. I mean, that's a huge block of votes.
It is.
Imagine that. God. Gee, I love that kind of power.
Oh, me too.
That sleeping power there,
But when I turn around, Joe, there's nobody following me. That's my problem.
That's why campus needs a teach-in.
Yes, it does. Well, that's the plan for the fall. We're going to hold a series of teach-ins and
that's great.
Going to hold some fireside chats with some of the honors college kids.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so that's very good. You can do that? I mean, I say you can do that, meaning that you as a professor can do that.
Yes. Okay. I mean, I have, it's a separate group. I mean, it's a nonprofit in Lansing area now. And
you can't do it as a professor.
They're opening up a campus chapter.
Oh, okay.
And so the student group will be inviting us in. And we'll help them put on their teach-ins in the fall. That's good. There's a lot of controversial groups on campus. They just sometimes have a hard time getting traction.
Oh, okay.
A lot of very active groups. We've had labor groups and all sorts of groups on campus. We had the sweatshop group for a while, remember?
Okay.
But
not as many as it used to be, though. It used to be a pretty active student.
They did, yeah.
They're not very active these days.
Yeah, I know. That's very sad.
It is.
No, it's strange. This isn't strange. It's an observation that the anti-war activism and the liberal activism came out of basically Freedom Summer in this country. Right. We went back to the campuses and held teach-ins and did things like that. Right. And we've got a similar kind of issue. I mean, nobody's getting beat up in the same way, but voters are being suppressed.
Oh, no question about it. And, there's a lot of silence out there. I mean,
there gets a lot of activity on Facebook, but the problem is that that's what's called a kind of slacktivism. Very easy to click on a little button that says, I agree with this or I agree with that, but it doesn't translate into any power. Power is the issue. How do you get the vote out and get people to change power?
That's true. Yeah. And right now, we're losing this one because that last election 2 years ago really, really changed things.
I don't think people still realize so much.
Yeah. Well, they should see it here in Michigan. I know. Gosh, it's really not the best situation, especially for women. I mean, we do have to look at women and say, boy, what are you going to do now?
Hopefully we're coming back, Joe.
I hope so.
We got 40 of them down there at Gone Wired on Saturday night making artworks and telling personal testimonies. We've captured those on video. We're starting to make some YouTube videos about the issues in preparation for the fall campaign. We've got new websites up, trying to get the word out to women. Rachel Maddow has been spending a lot of time.
She is very good.
Yeah.
She's very good. She's so clear when she tells what's going on. She's so clear. Yes. She's great.
Joe, I got one last question.
Sure.
What are the black ministers doing in their churches?
Well, in terms of the voter suppression stuff, they've been talking about it.
Have they? Okay.
Oh, yeah, they've been talking about it. And they are still telling people to go and vote. They're doing that. So I think we can count on them to do their job. I don't think that they're going to be a problem with this. I really don't. In fact, I told you, I see only one problem, and that's what I've been saying all night. There's no other problem, really. There's no problem.
You're looking right at me.
I'm looking right at you. Because, last time around, the Hispanics and Latinos, there was some concern about them, right? Go to McCain and go to Obama. When George Bush ran, concerned about them. This time around, there's no concern about them. It's clear. They're going to Obama. Yeah. And so that's important. So
those are dealt with.
And I looked at the statistics on every group. I told you, every group I looked at it. And that's why I'm wondering, how can the polls be so even when you got all these groups and a disproportionate support for Obama, and yet the polls are even? I mean, what's going on here?
And they have been about as brutal in the war on women as you can get.
Exactly.
And insulting.
And the gap is not widening that much.
I know.
Anyway, we'll have to find out what's going on. I've been asking you. I've asked all the women professors I know out of Michigan State. What do they say? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, it brought me out of the woodwork. Okay. I've never been a joiner. I'm now going to meetings. Jeez, that's not that anybody's happy about it when I show up, but I am willing to go to meetings and try to make things happen.
Well, this is good. The young women, though, very young women, like my college students, for example, they're not really as active as they should be.
No, they're not. No, it's been very frustrating. Yeah. In fact, the young women that are starting the chapter on campus are finding it hard because it's hard to get enough women.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's It's not on their radar yet.
Jeez.
We made life too easy for them.
We have a lot of work to do.
Yes, we do.
We have a lot of work. I'll tell you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jordan, and I hope you will be back in March, just before when your book is coming out.
The book comes out.
Thank you so much. That'll be great.
Great.
Thank you. Good to see you. And we're now going to be joined by area musician and husband of mine.
He came in like one of the Blues Brothers.
Carrying his musical gear with him, Mr. Drew Howard, Captain Midnight, who's been having to chew on the microphone, it looks like.
Right.
You do know you're on a webcast at the same time, so people can see you. You can go to www.lansingonlinenews.com and you can see Drew. Drew is getting ready to play tonight at the Green Door with Steppin' in it. Tell me about, it's going to be sort of supergroup night down there.
Yeah.
If you give me a hard time tonight, Drew Howard, you'll pay. I can tell what he's playing. And he's
Sure.
He's going to give me one-word answers. Tell me all about the people coming.
Okay. Josh Davis, the singer, is not there tonight, so I'm playing and Jen Sigget's playing. And so apparently it takes two people to sub for Josh. That's what a badass he is. So, and Mike Lynch on keys, Andy Wilson, of course, on trumpet and harmonica, Jeff Lewis on drums, Dominic John Davis on bass. He's just back from playing in Australia with Jack White. So it's going to be a gas.
That was quite an experience for Dominic, wasn't it, going down there to Australia? Did Jack White take both bands down there?
I guess so.
The girl band and the boy band?
I think so, yeah.
Wow, that's got to be complicated.
Yeah.
He's a complicated man, Jack White.
So talk to me, Drew. Don't go silent on me.
Drew, have you been out on the road? You've been doing
Yeah,
some gigs. You've been
we're
traveling.
up north. Went up north with my new band, Mad Cat Midnight Blues Journey, with Mad Cat Ruth, the famous harmonica player, and Randissimo from Organissimo on drums, and Mark Schrock on bass, and it's an awesome band. We haven't rehearsed once, but everybody's hot stuff, and so we just pull it together. We played in Baldwin and in Cadillac, and then I went up to Petoskey and played with the Detroit singer-songwriter Billy Brandt, and then we went down to the Sleepy Bear Festival and played, which is one of many music festivals in the north.
Used to be Dunegrass, right?
Used to be Dunegrass. So that's festivals up there.
Are they doing as well this year? Because we were just talking earlier, the Common Ground was down 5,000 this year.
Really? Wow. I didn't know that. I don't know. It's not a huge festival. It's not Wheatland.
You'll be playing Wheatland as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
in
that's
September.
Drew Nelson?
With Drew Nelson. Playing with Drew tomorrow night at Meyer Gardens in Grand Rapids. Playing Friday at Collin Park in Holland with Mad Cat Midnight Blues Journey. And playing the private party with Jason Denny, the fabulous instrumentalist, in Shaftesburg on Saturday. And then Sunday, I'll sleep in.
Have you ever played at Meyer Gardens?
Yes, I have.
It's a great venue or not?
Yeah, it's a great venue. It's big. It's a Tuesday night show, so I think it's free for the audience. So they pack in 2,000 people just like that. Sell CDs. Yeah, it's a nice big venue, and that's run by Ralston Bowles, another Grand Rapids singer-songwriter.
He's on Judy Collins' label.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We've got a lot of talented people in Michigan. I mean, and there is a kind of circuit now. What kind of music genres are we talking about here? You kind of span a number of different genres.
Well, the singer-songwriter guys, I guess you could classify as folk music, I guess. And the blues, and
what happened to rock?
I don't know.
You do the hardwares.
Yeah.
Or you don't want people to know when you're in your other persona?
That's one of 20 bands I'm in.
How do you keep them all straight?
I don't. No, I keep them all straight.
You just go to drewhoward.com and look up your own calendar 5 times a day.
Yeah, I do.
Where am I at? What am I playing?
Exactly.
Then every once in a while I hear Drew on the phone saying, "Uh-oh, double booked." That can happen too.
But Michigan's a great state. There's lots of festivals, and lots of gazebo gigs, pavilion gigs,
Farmer market gigs.
And yeah, it's a great state for that, for sure, compared to a lot of other places.
We were also talking about maybe a haphazard observation that county fairs aren't as.
I haven't played one of those in a few years.
What's happened on those? It used to be we'd hear all summer long about who's playing at Ionia and who's playing in Jackson.
Yeah, they still do that. I mean, Jackson has, well, Willie Nelson played there last year at the fair. And
I think states are running out of some money, though.
I think, Ingham County, which is the county we're in, they haven't had anything
at the Ingham
going on in years.
Yeah.
And
we're seeing things like East Lansing Art Fair went down from 2 music stages to 1.
Yeah, that's really sad. Really sad.
How has the music business changed for young people? It used to be that your challenge was to get a major label to pick you up. Can you now go direct with the internet and build your own audience?
Sure. You would know that. You're an internet person.
Well, yeah, but you're the musician. So, I mean, what do young musicians do? How do they do that nowadays?
I'm not young. How about you?
You know any young musicians?
He's a young political activist. That's
very good. Yeah. Very good. Well, it's totally different from when I was a kid. I mean, there's the internet. There's everybody's got a phone with a camera on it. There's Facebook. So every show you do, at least 1 or 2 people has taken a picture of it, so it's accounted for. When I was a kid, that was, maybe somebody would have a camera, maybe. Right. And
maybe
it wasn't
they were still straight enough to be able to use it.
It's, what else? People, there's a video of your concert, the next day on YouTube. None of those things existed. You put up flyers and you tried to make friends with the people at the radio station. And
the recording technology has changed so much too. In the old days, it cost a fortune to be able to get a demo record out. You had to raise thousands of dollars, find a local studio to give you time at night, that kind of thing. Now you can do it off a Mac laptop.
Yeah, you can do it all yourself. That means there's a lot more music out there now too. I mean, when I was young, recording, you were lucky if you could get into a recording studio, and nowadays you can, record it all in your house. So it's totally changed.
The good news is you can get your music recorded more quickly, more affordably. The bad news is everybody's competing for people's attention, and how do you get attention?
Yeah.
You try to sell a single download.
I guess you do. And that's hard to do. So I have to look back, though, at this town. I mean, look at in your era, in our era, Bill, we go way back. I remember when it was Grandmother's, and then it was Silver Dollar, and I mean, all of the bars around here that seems the bar makeup. Is there still a bar business like that?
I don't know. I mean, there's places, where young people go to play, like the Loft and Max Bar, and sometimes there's more places to play. Sometimes there's fewer, but the whole recording process has been democratized for sure. And really, it's back to touring to make money to sell your CDs and your merch.
I was done the other day, though. I was looking back at one of the videos that I had done where I was down at Cobo when Drew's band played down at Cobo, and I was sitting on the stage with my little RCA camera there, and the security guards were trying to pound me into smithereens, and I realized there's not even any more Cobo anymore. Cobo is gone.
No, it's all gone. It's a banquet center now.
It's stunning to me. So a lot of those venues that we counted on, I mean,
there was Battle of Bands at skating rinks.
Yeah.
When I grew up on those, a lot of the
armories
had shows every week.
So are there as many kind of young band tour across the country and find venues to?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you need to get some young people in here. You're talking to an old guy here. Get some young people in here.
He doesn't want to drive 4,000 miles and sleep in his car every night, right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
then
couch
let's talk
tour.
about AARP. How do you like?
Yeah, I don't have my card yet. But I mean, it's always the same where, you're looking for places to stay and to do it on the cheap and you get paid cheap. So
the other thing that seems to have changed from the DJs, they just don't exist anymore in the same way where you used to go into a radio station and play.
Oh yeah,
it just doesn't happen anymore.
They don't build personalities anymore on air the way they did.
You got Dave and Doug or whatever.
Right. You got caught in that with some of the bands that you were involved in, Drew. I remember that, it used to be that there were the local DJ and they would play local music. But then when radio changed, it meant that everything was done by a playlist organized by some corporate headquarters 500 miles away. So, you couldn't get, even local bands never get played on the radio.
Yeah.
College radio filled some of that gap.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But we've seen Torch and Twang show is gone, so even college radio.
It's still there.
Oh, is it still there?
Still there, yep.
But Doug Neal no longer.
He's sometimes he's still there. But yeah, I think they're having, I don't know who they have for their jazz show or who's running the Torch and Twang show.
But whatever happened to the old hair farmer heavy metal days? Those are gone.
Well, yeah, where did jazz go? I mean, it's in a museum now. I mean, things change.
So what are the genres that dominate nowadays?
I don't know. I don't know.
If you could define all.
Good question.
But as a musician, you've had to change genres over the years and expand to stay to be able to keep playing.
Right, weddings, bar mitzvahs, yeah.
Well, you do. You play klezmer music.
All of it.
He's in Heartland Klezmorum. Yeah, so even the klezmer band.
It's like every other industry.
It's been digitalized.
It really has changed dramatically. No more printing up flyers and sticking them on posts.
That's the other thing that really drives me nuts. I used to love East Lansing because when you walk down the alleys, there'd be all these posters on the wall. And I guess now they consider that traction graffiti and you can't do that. So it was a much better world, I thought, when it was a little bit looser. So what will you be playing pedal steel tonight?
I'll be playing steel guitar and electric guitar. There's electric guitar that I didn't want to leave in my car. And some other stuff in there. Yeah, so it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. They're all friends, and we'll have lots of fun.
They get a pretty good turnout on Monday night?
Yes and no. I haven't been there in a while, so hopefully. It's the summertime, so.
It's always the exciting outdoor summer gig where you never know when you're going to show up, whether it's 100 degrees.
Well, it's not outdoors. We're playing inside.
I know what I'm saying. It's the summer season.
Okay.
A lot of these gigs that you were doing, you said you were very lucky up north. You didn't get rained out or shut out with lightning on some of them.
Yeah, I was lucky.
Is there a need for more venues in Lansing?
Well, sure. I mean, it kind of. 5 years ago, there were more places to play, and then for whatever reason, they die out. They rotate in, out. So.
Well, you think there's been a permanent shift, though? I don't see too many new places opening.
No. No.
We lost the Temple Club, but that was a huge venue.
Imperial Gallery, for the most part, it's still has occasional shows, so that's not totally gone. Magdalena's is gone.
One of the bigger changes in the music business that I found disappointing was that places like the Travelers Club and the coffee shops used to be able to have singer-songwriters come in and loan musicians with an acoustic guitar and play songs. And now, because of ASCAP and BMI coming in and saying you can't play copyrighted music without paying us a monthly fee, a lot of those places can't afford to do that, and so it shut off another venue, I think, for young musicians to be heard in their communities.
Well, yeah, they would go around and if you didn't have a sticker on your window that said ASCAP or BMI, and they would listen and see who's playing, and if they heard some cover tunes, they would stick you for that fee, which is $500 a year or more. So.
And that's if all you're doing is having a musician in there, giving them free food, and letting them pass the hat and sell
I
some
remember in
CDs.
the 60s, Hobies used to do that.
Yes.
Remember Hobies?
And the old world bread and ale.
Yeah.
I wonder what are some of the places you started out playing in town, Drew?
I don't know, East Lansing, because I grew up there.
Were you a club doobie?
Rick's Club Doobie. There was a club on the north side of Lake Lansing. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember what it was called.
The Dells, yeah.
Yeah.
You were pretty young then, but it was a rough club.
It was gone pretty quickly. What else?
We went down and we played CBGB's, which is now gone as well.
Mm-hmm.
That was a landmark that I hated to see disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably on a tour now. What's not there in New York?
I know.
Yeah. Well, that's New York. I mean, everything is really expensive, and it's either condos or offices.
Well, one of your friends who did quite a bit of work down there has now since moved down to Nashville. So is Nashville a hot place or a hotter place for musicians, a little bit more affordable?
Well,
maybe?
it's just it's harder for musicians to make a living in New York because the studios are gone. The digital realm has changed everything for the good and for worse, especially if you're a drummer.
Oh, no.
And the pit orchestras have been replaced by recorded music in Broadway,
Really?
especially because there's an article in the New Yorker about it a few months ago, and especially because Broadway's changed so much. It used to be plays and musicals about New York City, and now it's all Hollywood. It's Shrek, so
Yeah.
so it's all, so Tony moved to Nashville.
Getting rid of the orchestra pit means you can probably put in 10 or 15 more seats, and in New York, where the real estate's that expensive, that probably makes a big difference in terms of how many tickets you can sell.
Drew, you're going to be on a program at 10 Pound Fiddle celebrating Woody Guthrie, I think, aren't you?
Yes.
You excited about that?
We can tell.
Sure.
I knew you would.
Talk a little more about that, Drew.
Sure.
Or you'll pay, I won't feed you.
I was asked to play. I'm not putting this show together. I mean, it's really local musicians singing Woody Guthrie songs. That's really all I don't know if I'm going to pick my song or songs, or if they're going to pick those for me. I'm not sure. So we'll see.
Did Woody have a connection to you here? I don't think so.
I kind of doubt it.
No, but
He may have
it's
ridden the train.
10 Pound Fiddle is a folk club, so Woody Guthrie being,
The hero of that
yeah,
movie.
so.
Cool.
It's the anniversary of his death or birth. I forget.
I don't know which one it is. Yeah,
one of them. It's
one
the
of them we
100th
can
anniversary.
celebrate.
Yeah. You have a favorite Woody Guthrie?
I like This Land Is Your Land because that pretty much sums it up.
It certainly was a great organizing tune. Well, Drew, you played just about every kind of music in this town. I remember when you played the banjo with the symphony when they did Porgy and Bess, and that was a challenge, learning how to play with a symphony for the first time. So you played about every genre that there is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tonight's pedal steel and singing at the
Just
Green
steel
Door.
guitar, straight steel guitar.
Oh, straight steel.
Mhm.
Lap steel, or the standard
Yeah,
steel. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. No
yeah.
more pedals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just tonight, and yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and I hope some of our listeners get a chance to hear some of the music tonight. It's interesting to see all the different kinds of musical genres here in town. We'll be back next Monday night. We hope to be talking a little bit about food with the farmers market movement, and I'll be having my good friend Zenzi in, and she and I used to do public access television in East Lansing many years ago, and we're going to see what's happened in that area since then. And so it's remember to go to LansingOnlineNews.com. You can see a live webcast of this show and archive of all of our past shows. And we will see you next Monday evening, back here at 7 o'clock. LCC Radio, WLNZ, Lansing, Michigan.